I am done with CGC. I am never, ever going to be submitting any more books to that company. It's just been a complete and utter disaster. It's a joke. I can't stand them. New name for them, not CGC, it's Sleazy C. Because, man, are they a terrible company from my experience. But make sure to watch to the end of the video to hear the whole story, see some of the books that I recently got back from CGC. And, man, where do I start? I recently went to MegaCon down in Orlando, which MegaCon was a pretty fun event. Massively crowded. Tons and tons of people. I mean, it was crazy how busy it was there. And while I was there, I, of course, went to the CGC booth. And for those of you who don't know what's been going on with CGC recently, they've been actually embroiled in scandal because there have been two issues with them. One of them is a reholder scam that's been happening, where it looks like two individuals who were basically falsifying books, like getting qualified books like Hulk 181, First Wolverine, ones that had the value stamp taken out that were green labels, cracking them out of the case, stick them in another case, selling them as universal copies, as if there was nothing wrong with them. Or big target for them was ASM 300 First Venom, which, I've got right back there. So make sure to check your books. They've listed 350 books as far as books they think that are compromised, so make sure to check if your comics have been victims of that scam. There was also another scam that both of these came to light recently with as far as lawsuits go. And the second scam looks like it was an inside job where two employees were running a scam where they were stealing books that were submitted to CGC and either selling them themselves on eBay, or they were falsifying labels and selling them on eBay. Anyway, major controversy. In my opinion, CGC has not handled it well. For those of you who don't know, Dave from West Coast Avengers did a great interview along with the 9.9 newsstand with Matt Nelson, CEO of president of CGC and head grader at CGC. And to be honest, I was not impressed with the quality of Matt's answers. As far as it doesn't look like CGC has been going to be doing anything differently with their holders, even though obviously that's a big issue as far as people have been tampering with it, and they don't seem to think that it's that big of an issue, and they're just basically trying to, quiet down the uproar in the community. But I mean, this is a massive, massive blow to CGC or Sleazy C, because I mean that's what we have them for, right? So for those of you who don't know, CGC is a certified guaranteed company. They grade all kinds of different collectibles, comic books, trading cards, you name it, and all they have is our trust. We trust that once we have the book in their case encapsulated with the grade on it, that it is exactly the condition that they say it is. And since I've started the hobby, I've been an exclusive CGC proponent. I've only bought graded CGC books. I have not even touched a CBCS, which is the other rival grading company. And mainly because when I first got into the hobby, and it's even true to this day, is that CGC graded comic books hold a better value than the CBCS. So for me, it was purely an economic decision. Also, I got into comics before the new CBCS label came out, and aesthetically, CGC current labels are better, in my opinion, aesthetically than the old CBCS labels. So that was another reason. But let me get to the meat of the matter, which is at MegaCon. So MegaCon, I went to the CGC grading or submission booth, and man, it was a ghost town. There was like nobody there. So I've been to WonderCon, I've been to California Comic-Con, I've been to a lot of conventions. I went to Fanboy Expo up in Vancouver, lots of conventions, and usually if CGC or specifically CGC is there, there's usually a very long line for submissions, or at least there's traffic constantly throughout the day, or steady flow of traffic, even if the line. But I've seen like at WonderCon, the line was crazy, ridiculous. They said even at one point, I think it was 1 or 2 hour wait time. Anyway, I went to the CGC submission booth and this was on Friday of WonderCon, and nobody there. I mean, I walked literally right up to the front to submit my books. Now, you might be asking, why am I submitting books to CGC in the midst of this scandal? Because I know a lot of you out there have decided, rightfully so, to stop submitting. Well, if you want to know the full story, definitely check out this video over here, because that's the big backstory of most of my terrible experience with CGC, and really led me to this point right here at MegaCon of submitting books. So make sure to check that out. You do not want to miss that. CGC royally screwed me in that story, so make sure to check it out. But to make a short story long, basically I had credit with CGC because of a past issue, and I just wanted to use up my credit before, completely disqualifying them or completely stopping my relationship with CGC as far as submissions go. So I was just there literally to get some books slabbed for my brother, also to get some few comics reholdered, spend just the credit that I had left, and then just be done with CGC. And at the time when I went into submission, I was thinking, CGC, I should probably be done with them just because of the scandal, because of the story that I'm going to share in that other video about how much they screwed me. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking maybe I should give them another shot. Well, they definitely made sure to confirm my decision not to be a customer with theirs anymore with how they handled themselves at MegaCon. So again, no line at the CGC booth. I went right up, and I was getting some restoration removal from a Sensation Comics 6. That was probably my biggest thing that I was getting done with the credit. And basically, I had a Sensation Comics number 6. I have one back here. I'll show you the other one when I get it back. But Sensation Comics 6, that's a big book. That's the first appearance of the Golden Lasso of Truth for Wonder Woman. And there was it's a 1.8 restored label, and the only notes are that there's a piece added or a piece reattached with tape. So I was just having them crack the slab, remove the piece, regrade it, get a blue label, increase the value, right? So I get up there, and basically they couldn't really give me the right. I asked questions about it, like how the restoration was going to be removed, how long it would take. They couldn't give me great answers. They couldn't give me a really good time frame. I asked them about the credit, because that was the other thing. I submitted books for my brother. I submitted a couple reholders, and I had this restoration work done. And basically, it came out to the retail amount, and I told them, no, this should all be covered, or the lion's share should be covered by my credit that I was issued. I had a couple $100 at least in credit from CGC, and they said, oh, don't worry, we'll charge you now, but it will be reflected later in your bill. They're on the back end, will apply the credit. And I'm just supposed to take their word for it, I guess. And not just me, but other people. One other person at the booth at the time, same issue, where he had stored credit with CGC, Sleazy C. And he's like, why aren't you applying my credit? Oh, we can't do that now. We have to do it on the back end, which to me, you're a multi-gajillion dollar business. You should be able to apply my credit right there at the submission booth. I mean, what are you doing? Any retail job I've worked, regardless of the size of the company, we've been able to do store credit. Even small card stores and comic stores do store credit right at checkout, right at the cashier. So I don't know what CGC is doing, or Sleazy C is doing, when they're saying this, or this is their policy. And the other thing was I was making sure, I want to make sure that I get the right label, a blue label on this restored book, because there's no point in me submitting it and getting it back and not having the blue label. And they had no real good answers for me. They just said we'll put a note in there, the type of label you want, but I would call CGC's customer service and let them know what's going on. And I'm like, why am I having to do the work, especially when I'm not paying with my credit, but you know what I mean? I am entrusting you for this service. Why am I doing the work? You're the one who's supposed to be doing the work, and why can't you answer whether or not it'll be blue label? I understand if you think the restoration couldn't be removed, like if it's color touch or something. This is literally a piece being removed. And even then, he couldn't answer. He didn't even answer that way, like, oh, it's a possibility we couldn't remove it. He's just, I don't know, you should call CGC customer service and let them know the type of label that you want to request. Okay, fine. So I submit the book, and after I submitted it, they had me wait in line. They're like, oh, make sure to wait in line to drop off the paperwork we're about to print off. that line was not the line for paperwork that they pointed me to. That was a line for the signature series to verify this, or to submit for signature series. So I waited in a line they told me to wait in for no reason for quite a while before they finally said, "Oh, sorry, you're in the wrong line. Come over here. We'll take care of you." And then I spoke with another gentleman who then, again, I asked the same questions like, "Can we ensure that I get a blue label or the right label on the book?" "Oh, yeah, no, we'll have to call customer service, or we'll make a note of that." Anyway, finally get it all done. Even though no one was there, the whole process took like 30, 45 minutes, which to me is just ridiculous. It's just a couple books, couple reholders, a submission, and the restoration removal. That should not take that much time, but I digress. The worst part was I then ran over to the CGC panel. So they had 3 CGC panelists who were going to talk about how to grade comics, how to grade cards, and how to grade video games. And they said in the programming that they were going to show exactly, go through the process of how to grade a comic book. So I was thinking, this is something I would like to see for myself, because I've always wondered, what does that process look like? We all wonder, how on earth does CGC actually grade their books? Because, of course, all of us have doubts about grades of books that we've gotten back from CGC, right? I mean, I can't be the only one there. So I went to this talk, this CGC panel, and they said they were giving away a bunch of prizes, and they're going to be answering a bunch of questions. And I'm thinking this is going to be a pretty big panel, because CGC, large grading company, right? Big convention, MegaCon. Tens of thousands of people. I mean, it was tons. It was packed. So I'm just thinking, I got to get over there right away, get a seat. I kid you not. I get in there. There's like nobody in the room. And when it started, I got there a little early because I'm thinking, I need to get a seat. Once I got in there and it started, I mean, even they were shocked. You could tell that they were concerned with the size of the group, because they were wondering, like, do we fire off with this few people or do we wait? And you could tell this was big for them, because they even had a huge film crew in there. And yeah, anyway, there were less than 10 people in the audience. Less than 10 when it started. And I gotta say, this was like the nail in the coffin for my decision of why I won't be going with CGC anymore. And it's really because not only my experience personally, but of bad experiences with him, but really the issues with the scams that's been going on recently, but also this panel discussion. So the grader who was doing the comic presentation, his name was Sean. Nothing against him. He seemed like a nice dude. He was not very thorough in his presentation. So basically what happened is he was supposed to walk through how he graded comics. He did, or how they're graded. He didn't do that. He basically just showed a comic book and said, here are flaws in the book. And so, yeah, that would land in a 6.0. Oh, here's a 9.6 versus a 9.8, and this is the difference between them. Not, to me, when you tell me we're going to walk you through how to grade a comic, I'm going to watch you live grade the comic while you're explaining what you're doing while you're doing it, rather than just saying, oh, here's a book, here are some flaws, this is the grade we would assign it, without walking through what the standards of the different grades are, how you go about finding those flaws, because obviously you already knew the flaws were there because this is a book you picked up and that you've already graded. It's not like this is I thought it was going to be a book that they haven't touched before or he hasn't handled, and then he's going to walk through and show you how you graded it. Nothing like that. Nothing like that. And it took about 5-10 minutes just talking about different grades and what's make difference between a 9.8 and a 9.9, and it just wasn't hugely valuable information. And then I went to the other graders as far as the cards and then the video games. I'm not going to talk about those because that was not of interest to me, but basically very similar, where they just held up a card or held up a comic and like, here's how you tell if it's counterfeit, or here's how you tell if there's different condition, or here's examples of different condition issues and what grades those would be. But the big thing is they opened it up to Q&A at the very end. So at the very end of the panel discussion, people were wanting to ask questions of CGC in light of all these recent scandals. And I got to admit, I was one of them. So I raised my hand and I asked Sean, I said, Sean, what's the difference between a senior grader and a non-senior grader? And for those of you who don't know, CGC in an update about the scandal has said that one of the changes they've made to their policies is that now with the reholder program, and for those of you who don't know what a reholder is, it's when you take a comic book that has already been in a holder and you have it reholdered, meaning they crack it out, put the comic in a new plastic case with a new label. So basically, if you're reholdering a book, you're wanting a new label because there's different types of old style labels that CGC has. So the reholder program does exactly that. You submit a graded book and they put it in a new case with a new label. So one of the changes they've done with the reholder program is that they now have, at least they've said on their website, they now have a senior grader looking over each one of the reholder submissions. Which begs the question, who is a senior grader? Like, what makes them different? And second, why weren't you having a senior grader looking over the reholders before, right? So my question was to Sean at MegaCon, what's the difference between a senior grader and a regular grader? And man, I was not impressed with his response. So basically he stated, well, a senior grader is someone who's been trained in how to grade our books. You can kind of think of it like an apprentice who's gone through an apprenticeship. So a senior grader has basically completed the apprenticeship. And I'm thinking, so first of all, you can't really give a great definition of what a senior grader is. Because to me, to be able to get good definition, you have like, oh yeah, these are the qualities that make a senior grader. A, B, C, D. Those are the qualities of a senior grader. Not, well, it's kind of they've been through our training or our apprenticeship program. Well, first of all, you just said that it's like an apprentice program. It's not really an apprenticeship. And how is that different from regular training? So are you telling me that a senior grader is just someone who's completed your basic training? Like any workforce training, like when you're hired, obviously every company trains you in the job when you first hire them. So as a senior grader, he made it seem like a senior grader is just someone who's been trained. But then he also said, oh, and they have, seniority with the company, experience with the company. And I'm thinking, well, be specific. What does this mean? A week? A month? A year? 5 years? 10? Like, tell me exactly what qualifies this person to have the title of senior grader. So to me, I'm thinking, okay, it's someone who just has spent some time with CGC and completed their training. That's not impressive to me, knowing that they're the ones looking over the reholder program. Like, you make it out to be a big deal. Oh, yeah, senior graders are now looking at comics, at the reholder comics. But it's not even impressive who a senior grader is. But more importantly, okay, if that's who's looking over the books now is someone who's just been trained and has some experience with a company, who was doing it before? People in the training? New hires? Like, what's going on? And I mean, that kind of makes sense, right? That would be a weak link in the chain, and why the scammers would target the reholder program for the scam. Because, yeah, why wouldn't you if they're new people or people who haven't been trained properly or haven't completed the training or whatever? So not impressed with that answer at all. So I'm just thinking quality control issues at CGC to me don't seem to be there. And also the response to these scandals of, oh, we're going to just put a senior grader there, which doesn't really, to me, is not impressive after listening to the response of what a senior grader is, doesn't instill confidence in me that they're taking it seriously. And this is further emphasized by the fact that another person got up and asked, so in light of recent events, is CGC considering changing their holder, getting a new holder, redesigning their holder? And Sean was immediately, no, we're not even considering that. No, we think that our holder is perfectly fine and is a great holder. Basically, is exactly what he said. And everybody in the room, and all 10 of us, less than 10 of us, but everyone was like, "Are you serious? Did those words just come out of his mouth that they're not even going to consider it? They're not even going to consider it? How could that be your response, CGC? That you're not even going to consider changing your case after 350 plus, because we all know it's more, because there's been evidence that scandal's been going on for 10 years now, the Reholder scandal. 350 plus books have been tampered with, and you found out that there's people in-house messing with your books. And Immaculate Comics goes on YouTube and shows how you can open the case with like a hairdryer, basically, with the heat gun, and open your case, and you're not gonna even consider it. You're either completely ignorant of how serious this problem is to the community and to your customer base, or you are just completely arrogant, thinking that the changes you've already made will suffice to stop future scammers like this, or to appease the community, in my mind. Like, you either have to be really naive or really arrogant to not even consider. I mean, that's just mind-blowing, right? Literally mind-blowing that you wouldn't even consider it. Of course you should consider it. You should be talking about it. You should already have people looking into redesigned cases. You should already be testing them, right? Or at least in the process of doing that. Or studying your case and looking at the flaw. You know what I mean? Literally anything with the case. But to say that the company's not even considering changing the case, mind-blowing to me. And not only that, Sean, we asked more specific questions. I say we because there were so many questions being asked by the 10 of us that were there, because we were very invested in the finding out, like, what's going on at CGC, what's going on with the grading, how is the grading happening, what are they doing in response to the scandals. So it was asked, basically, tell us on average, how long does it take for one of your graders to grade a comic book? And I just want you all to guess in the comments right now, guess in the comments, how long do you think CGC spends grading your comic book on average? Right now in the comments, post right now how much time. Because to me, I was literally in shock. My mouth like dropped when Sean said, I would say about 10 seconds. 10 seconds. You heard 10 seconds. Are you serious? How much money we spend to grade these books? I mean, you pay, 4% of market value for things older than 1975 and $1,000 value? And you're spending on average 10 seconds to grade that book? What? Even a modern book that's like a 9.8. Yeah, I can see how that would be a faster process. But that would mean that those books obviously averages 10 seconds. So that means that a lot of books are taking less than 10. If like a Silver Age or a Golden Age or something takes more than 10 seconds. And I know that maybe this is, it's not like he has the data for sure that it's exactly 10 seconds, but even anything around that. Like, I'm not thinking seconds, I'm thinking minutes. And he says 10 seconds? So a modern book takes 5 seconds? And his Bronze Age books takes 15 seconds? And so someone asked, what's the most amount of time you've ever spent on a book? And he talked about how he's held like Action 1s in his hand, and he said 3 minutes. And I'm thinking, are you serious? Are you serious? An Action 1 worth millions of dollars. And how much money they paid for you to grade that book, and you spent 3 minutes on it? That was What are you guys doing? And what am I paying for? And no wonder everyone has these concerns about quality control and like, I don't understand why it got the grade that it did and why aren't there any grader's notes on my 9.6? Like, because they're taking on average like 10 seconds to grade the book apparently. Like, no wonder. And apparently they have like new people that haven't been trained, I guess, that were grading the reholders. So like, no wonder someone scammed them for like a decade. It's crazy. Like my mind was like blowing up when I was in this panel discussion. I was just floored. And then the best part was, because we've all been told, oh yeah, you got to trust the grade because the book's touched by 3 graders, 3 different graders grade the book. So you know, it's not just one person and it's not just, oh yeah, someone had a bad day and just started, and there's differences in graders. So if you get Bobby versus Susie, you know, you're going to get a different grade. So yeah, we have 3 people, you know, so to make sure it's all quality control and to make sure our standards are all followed and it's all the same grading across the board. We've all heard that, and there's been doubts about that in the community as far as it doesn't seem like that's the case. Well, I asked, because Sean had brought up the fact of, oh yeah, 3 graders, and I asked him to elaborate, like, how does that work? And he explained that, yeah, 3 graders look at the book, but the last grader, who's like the most senior grader, the one who has the most seniority or has, based on performance and longevity with the company, has gained more accolades, or basically they have a ranking system where they're constantly judging their graders, and like if you're very accurate and you're doing it for a long period of time, you get to move up as far as status in your grading. And so the last person who touches the book, the third person, they determine the grade of the book. So, and I asked specifically, so does that mean if grader A and grader B both say, hey, this book's a 6.0, so 6.0, 6.0, and the third guy says 4.0, the book's a 4.0, and he's like, yeah, because the third person doesn't have to take into account the other 2 grades. He's the final say, and whatever his grade or her grade is going to be the final grade on the book. And I was like, what? It's not even like an average? No, it's not even an average. But he does, you know, get information from the first, or her get information from the first 2 graders about like what they saw and the flaws that they found and what they thought it was. But at the end of the day, yeah, if he disagrees or she disagrees, then yeah, it's whatever the third person says it is. Then how can you claim that it's like 3 graders? Because that's the assumption, right? When you present that information to the public without explaining really what that means, when you say 3 people touch the book, there's 3 graders that look at the book, we're all thinking, well, then they, you know, it's like an average of the 3, or they all have input in the final grade of the book. It does no way convey that only one of those people determines the ultimate grade of that comic. One person has the final say. And if he or she disagrees with the other graders, it doesn't matter. That's the final grade that the book gets. That is not clear at all with the community. I can say that because personally, I in no universe would have thought that, based on the information CGC provided about 3 graders touching and looking at the book, that's what they meant. And I can't believe anyone else in the community, unless they found out this information for themselves, would think the same way. I mean, that's just pure poppycock. It's basically you're just having one grader look at the book and grade the book. Obviously, you have the other 2 look at it and give notes and stuff, but if they have no bearing on the grade, then of what value is it? Besides, oh, here are my notes on the book. Well, and again, like, it seems like the first 2 are more like trainees or just are not great as good graders or don't have much time. So, like, should we even value their grade in the first place? And that's why we're putting the emphasis on the last grader? Maybe that's why CGC is doing it this way? I don't know. I just don't understand it. I have no clue. I don't get it. To me, to ensure quality and to ensure that standards are put equally across the board, it's like sample size, right? The greater the sample size, the lower the the difference, right? The less variance there is. So to me, you have to have the largest sample size as possible. And I'm not talking 50 people grading a book, but I'm definitely talking about more than one that just has the final say. If you have 3 graders, perfect. But have all 3 of them give the book a grade and then average those 3 or something, have some kind of weight, or do best 2 out of 3 or, majority. I don't know, but not just one. And again, if that's your process, communicate that. Tell everybody this is how it works with the 3 graders. There's no transparency, or at least I don't see transparency. It's ridiculous. So, this panel, we all left like scratching our heads, and I met with 2 other guys afterward, and all 3 of us were like, no, we're done. No. They take 10 seconds to read our book. The 3 graders thing isn't really real in the fact that only the 3rd grader grades the book, or is the ultimate decider for the book. They have no intention of even looking at changing their holders, really. What more do you need as far as information from sleazy CGC to not go with them anymore? Obviously, all of you do what you want, but I know personally, after hearing that and the experience that I've had with them in the past, no, I'm done. No more CGC submissions for me. I'll continue to buy CGC slabbed books because, I like graded books for a lot of reasons, mainly because they're worth more, and it's easier to transact with slabbed books because there's more transparency there. And I know there are issues with the grading, and I know CGC has the scandals, but at the end of the day, there is at least more or less gray area than dealing with raw books. So it's to me, there's still value in having graded comic books. Plus, I think they display better. Needs to say, I have considered even not buying CGC, sleazy C slab books anymore, but going with CBCS. I've not experienced anything with them. I've never purchased a slab from them, again, mainly because of how the labels looked when I first got in and also the values. So I'll definitely have to look into that. Let me know in the comments your experiences with CBCS. I'd love to know, are they better than sleazy C? Let me know what your experiences are like. Let me know what your experiences are like with sleazy C or CGC as well, good, bad, or otherwise. But yeah, I'm done. And just before we sign off, I wanted to show you the books that I got. So I reholdered this Avengers 55. This was a 9.4 off-white to white. This was one of the books that I submitted at MagaCon when the line was non-existent. And it came back 9.4 off-white to white. So happy with that book. And I'm just happy that it got reholdered without having any kind of issues, I hope. But also, my brother, this is one I submitted for him, Detective Comics 373. This is the second appearance of Mr. Freeze, the first appearance as Mr. Freeze, because he was at Mr. Zero in his first appearance in Batman 121. This came back at 5.5 off-white to white. We were hoping for a 6.0. The seller sold it to us as a 6.0, which, again, that was the advantage of buying graded books, is that that grade is more transparent and more accurate than buying raw books. But I digress. And I forgot to say, Avengers 55, first appearance of Ultron, so pretty cool. But make sure to subscribe to the video, or subscribe to the channel to win giveaways. I'll be announcing those soon. And again, check out the channel or the video where I talk about how CGC royally screwed me.